John, welcome back to the show, man. It's great to visit with you.
Cable, it is always a pleasure to join you on the show as well.
Absolutely. So, did you have a good hunting season?
I did. Among other things, I went to Colorado and I shot a pronghorn up there and a bison, and that was a fun
Nice.
hunt.
Yeah.
And then as we're recording this, I literally just got back a couple days ago from hunting sandhill crane out in Abilene.
Nice. Yeah, I did a crane hunt in November. Man, those things make a big thud when they hit the ground.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
Fun and delicious too.
hmm
But about the bison, how does one? Is that like a private land hunt?
Yeah, so Colorado, the only bison that you can hunt there, it's all on, yeah, it's all on private land, that
Uh-huh.
sort of thing. It's not like Arizona or Utah or something where the tags are super hard to get.
hmm And what is the price tag on a bison these days? Ballpark.
I
It's a
think it
lot of
all
meat.
depends. It is, right? So I
Yeah.
I like physically got over 200 pounds of cut and wrapped meat out of that bison, and I have a chest freezer in my garage, and that thing was literally full to the brim, and that was after I gave a bunch of it away.
Right.
I want to say a bison will start out around $4,000 or $5,000, at least
Uh-huh.
kind of up there. I don't know what they are other places, and that's for a cow or an immature bull, and then could easily double from that for a really big bull.
Okay.
And
I mean,
I shot a quote unquote management bison, so it was about
uh,
half as big as a really big bull.
well, I'm just thinking about the price of meat, of beef specifically in Biden's America, and you might not have got a bad deal there.
Well, let me run those numbers here. You might be onto something.
I mean, goodness gracious. I was at the store yesterday. I was making um moose smash burgers from you were talking about meeting up with the guys from Arluck. I think I shot that moose with them in 2018. Maybe it was
Mhm.
yeah, I think it was 2018. Still eating it. I had to buy a whole nother freezer for the damn thing. And that's a good thing.
Uh-huh.
But yeah, so I was making these smash burgers. So I went to go get some hamburger buns. It was like $4 for hamburger buns.
Oh, geez.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah.
Yeah,
Uh,
my bison worked out about $22 a pound for meat.
okay. Yeah, well, that's a little more than Biden's America, but it's depends on the cut, I guess.
Yeah, but
um,
it's good, man. I've been eating that stuff like crazy since October on that hunt, and
oh
that
yeah.
was that was a fun hunt. And gosh, and the meat is so good, and I got so much of it. So it's been a really good year for me.
And how many points did you have to use for your pronghorn hunt?
I actually got it. It was a private land pronghorn
Okay.
hunt, so I drew it with 0 points. I drew it as a second choice, so I actually built points in Colorado this year.
Nice. Yeah. Can't beat that. I burned 5 Wyoming points for my archery elk hunt, buddy and I. I think if you averaged 3.5 between your party, you were pretty much guaranteed to draw. So, but now I got to start over in Wyoming.
That is how I feel about Arizona. I burned 8 points in Arizona this year for a late rifle elk hunt, and I had a great hunt out there, but didn't come home with an elk, and now I got to start over.
Oh yeah. Well, so I had a listener ask me to do a show on the 300 Win Mag versus the 7 Mag, and I said, well, I know the guy to call, and we'll sit down with John and we'll hash it out. So the 300 Win Mag though is the most popular big game caliber in North America, and for a reason. It was released in I think '63. It's been embraced by hunters and military snipers alike. Um, some of the obvious pros that I see is just the wide array of bullet options, anything from a 150 up to well over 200. I think maybe 220 is the max. I think 180 is probably the most popular. I mean, that's usually what I'm shooting. If I was to go like on my moose hunt, I went with the 200 grain, just a little bigger. But it's a flat shooting gun. What are some of the other pros to the 300 Win Mag?
So the 300 Win Mag. Well, I'll show you the cases of them here. As you can see, let's see how well can you see that?
No, I can see it.
They're
Yeah.
Yep. So this one is the 300 Win Mag. The other is the 7 millimeter. As you can see, their overall length is almost identical, but
Uh-huh.
the 300 is a tiny bit longer, and it has a tiny bit bigger case, and so it has more case capacity, like 5% more case capacity, and it's also loaded to a higher pressure, 64,000 versus 61,000 for the 7 mag, and so it is just a little bit more powerful cartridge, but by those respects. It'll shoot the same weight bullet a little bit faster, depends on the load, like 50, 100 feet per second faster. And like you said, it can shoot heavier bullets. Like you said, 180 is the most popular, but you can get 200, 212, things like that, that are even bigger, larger diameter. And so it's got about, I think it's about 18% more frontal surface area than the 7mm rim mag. And so you shoot it through there and say, both bullets expand to twice their diameter. Well, the 300 Win Mag is going to make just a bigger hole and cause more damage that way going through the body compared to the 7mm bullet. And that's the big things right there with it.
Okay. What about, and when I was looking a little bit, just a little history up on these two calibers, which, to be honest with you, are probably the two that I shoot the most. I love each of them. I didn't realize that the 7 mag was actually older just by a year, but it was released before the 300 Win Mag.
Yeah. So Winchester rolled out all their Winchester Magnum cartridges in the 1950s and early 60s. You had the 264 Win Mag, the 458 Win Mag, the 338 Win Mag, and those all did real well. And then in 1962, Remington released the 7mm Remington Magnum and the Model 700 rifle the same year, and that thing just exploded in popularity, both of them together. And that was a super popular round almost from the get-go. You compare it to something like a 270 or a 30-06, and it's a big jump up going from those to the 7mm Remington Magnum. And I'll show you here. You compare the 7 mag to a 30-06 cartridge. Same length, but you can see how the 7 mag is a fatter case. It's based off the 375 H&H, and so you can hold more powder in there, but have it still fit in a standard linked action that would fit a 30-06 or a 270. And so it can push bullets quite a bit faster than the 30-06. It's flatter shooting. It has more kinetic energy, et cetera, than that cartridge. And guys just loved it from the get-go. If you were going to shoot a mule deer or something like that at, a couple 100 yards, a little bit more resistance to wind drift, that flatter trajectory, especially in the days before laser rangefinders and adjustable turrets. The 7 mag was just awesome for that stuff. And then it had some issues kind of at the beginning on really big game like elk, just because it was shooting bullets so fast that the bullets at the time, for the most part, in many cases, just weren't up to the stresses of those higher velocity impacts. And they ended up fixing a lot of
the bullets would fragment or not get enough penetration.
Yep, that's exactly right. So say you shoot like a 140 grain bullet out of a 7mm mag, and it's going to be going 3,100 feet per second, something like that, out of the muzzle. A lot of those bullets are designed for use on deer, and especially at the time, those bullets were designed for, say, 7mm Mauser impact velocities, which was a couple 100 feet per second slower, and so they were designed for that. And then you're shooting them so much faster, they'd expand really rapidly. Sometimes they'd pancake on impact. Sometimes they would just completely come apart. And you shoot an elk in the shoulder or something like that under the right conditions, say at like 150 yards or something, you could get just a nasty flesh wound, but might not get into the body. You use a heavier weight bullet or a tougher bullet, or you say you shoot that same bullet at 350 yards instead of 150 yards. The situation's a little bit different. And so it got kind of a bad reputation at the beginning, but then they started making better factory loads for it, better suited to that stuff. People learned how to use it better, and it became an incredibly effective cartridge on elk. And then Winchester saw how popular the Remington load was, and then they released the 300 Win Mag that next year, really to kind of fill that gap in their lineup.
Okay, and so they're competing against each other, obviously. They're both from the same origin, though, which is the 375 H&H, which I think that what they just belted 375 H&H and they necked them down.
And then shortened it a little bit. So I'll show you. So the 7, this is a 300 Win Mag versus a 375. You see how much longer that 375 cartridge is.
Yeah. The last time I saw one of those, I was shooting it into a buffalo.
Yeah.
Actually, it was a 375 Ruger, but very similar.
So this is what I shot my bison with this year, was a 375 H&H. But so that requires a longer magnum length action. And so you
Mhm.
shorten it to be 3.34 inches long overall, and it'll fit in the same length rifle that I keep talking about, that 30-06 length standard length action. And then, yeah, you eliminate some of the taper in the case, neck it down, shorten it, and then you got a bunch of the Magnum cartridges kind of filled that. All, the 264, 338, 458 Win Mag, 300 Win Mag, the 7mm Remington Magnum, all of them are basically a 375 case, neck down and shortened.
Mm-hmm. Well, so both of these calibers, though, excel at distance. And
Mm-hmm.
if you were to go to a competitive long range match, I know the 6.5 Creedmoor has really crept into that scene as well. But traditionally, it would be the 300 Win Mag, 7 Mag, and 308.
It depends on the kind of the match that you're talking about. Gosh, I think it was back in the 1920s. A guy named Ben Comfort won the Wimbledon Cup using a 300 H&H Magnum, which is a 375 H&H, just neck down to 30 caliber, and it basically gives you what the 300 Win Mag was, but just in a little bit longer package. And so, yeah, they're all real flat shooting cartridges compared to what they had at the time. There's stuff that's flatter shooting than them now, and that extra velocity also kind of helps with the wind. And so, yeah, you want to reach out there a little bit, that helps with that. And if you're trying to hunt at that range too, you're just going to have more retained energy at a given range than something like a 30-06.
So what is, if we said, is one better than the other? You obviously talked about, I mean, the 300 Win Mag, larger grain bullets, it's going to have a little more knockdown power for that reason. It's also, and maybe the recoil is negligible, and maybe it's just specific to each rifle, but I certainly feel my 300 Win Mag thumps a little bit harder than the 7 Mag.
That is the big difference there. And so I will not say that one of them is quote unquote better just across the board, but one of them may be better for you or this other person or for this different situation. You take comparable loads in each one and you shoot them in the same weight rifle, the 300 Win Mag is going to have like 20-25% more recoil. So I mean, it's a good move up in recoil from the 7 Mag, which is itself have more recoil than a lot of other cartridges because it's a Magnum cartridge. And so, yeah, you put it in the same weight rifle, it's going to recoil a lot more. It is at or maybe over, or it's near the top or maybe over what some people can tolerate. Once again, it all kind of depends on the person, the weight of the rifle, all of that stuff, right? A heavy rifle is going to recoil less than a lighter rifle. You put a muzzle brake on it, a suppressor on it, that sort of thing, that will tame it to a certain extent. But for
I
this
don't see
reason,
a lot of women, and like even the lady that cuts my hair, she hunts and she's like, yeah, she loves the 243. Like that's the same thing my 10-year-old son uses, right? But I don't see like that gun for people that maybe say 130-pound human being. That's a lot.
It is. And the 7 Mag may still be too much for some people, but there's going to be more people that can handle it than the 300 Win Mag. And so that's a case where people that just don't like dealing with recoil, but they want that Magnum, quote unquote, Magnum performance, the 7 Mag is really good for them. And I was, reading through the comments on my article that I wrote about this a long time ago, just to kind of refresh my memory on what some people were saying about it. And like almost everybody that commented on it that had hunted with both of them extensively and shot both of them, exactly like you said, they're like, oh yeah, the 7 Mag is definitely a lot easier on my shoulder than the 300 Win Mag. And it's still effective enough, and it's darn effective on a lot of game, that a lot of people just kind of tend to slide that way towards it. I don't know that there's any game out there that moving up to the 300 Win Mag, you can hunt that game that you couldn't ethically hunt it with the 7mm rim mag. It is more popular more powerful, but it's not like moving up to the 375 H&H where it puts you in a whole different category of power, and you can hunt, like a buffalo or something with it that you really couldn't ethically with the 7 Mag.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and my son, Henry, I think he would have been 8, almost 9 at the time. He was shooting his new 243, getting ready for the 2021 deer season. And he was like, oh, cool, I want to shoot the one with the thermal on it. I was like, okay, well, that's on the 6.5 Creedmoor, the gun everyone makes fun of, but I like to shoot pigs and coyotes with it. So he shot that, and he was like, cool, I like the thermal scope. He was like, it definitely kicked a little bit. These are all suppressed, keep in mind.
All right.
And then I gave him the 7 mag suppressed, and he shot that and was like, nope, not interested in that. One and done there. But you think about, but he weighs 65 pounds. And you think about, though, the beauty of suppressors is you can cut that recoil in half on both of these calibers.
Mhm.
So I guess, if you considering that, and I think one of a guy brought his wife to Africa with us the last trip I went, and I think she shot his 300 Win Mag suppressed, and was able to handle it. But that,
Mhm.
you're talking about really mitigating that recoil when you put a suppressor on there.
So my 300 Win Mag, all loaded up, ready to go with the scope, full magazine, a bipod, all that stuff on it. I want to say it's like 11 and a half pounds. So it's not a light rifle. It's light enough where I can get around with it and everything. And shooting that, it is an absolute pussycat to shoot. I have no problems with recoil at all on it. But you reduce that weight by 2, 3, 4 pounds, something like that, to put it in a lighter weight rifle that you may want to take like on a mountain hunt or something like that. That recoil is going to go up a lot.
Yeah.
Whereas because the 7 mag does recoil less than the 300 Win Mag, you can use it in a lighter rifle and have either the same or potentially even still a less recoil than the 300 Win Mag with a heavier rifle.
Mm-hmm. What do you see long term? Because, like I told you, I mean, I have so many favorite calibers. 6.5 Creedmoor is not one of them, but I love my 270. We've talked about the 270 on this show before. I love the 7 mag. I love the 300 Win Mag. I enjoy shooting my son's 243 when we're like, oh, look, there's some pigs. I don't grab my 300 Win Mag. I grab his 243 if both of them are in the truck, which usually they are when we're rolling around the ranch. And so I have a lot of favorites. But do you foresee, with the increased popularity of these new PRC calibers, 6.5 PRC, 300 PRC, do you think that will displace either one of these in popularity?
Man, it's really hard to say. I heard actually from the SHOT Show today that Browning is introducing a fast twist 270 rifle that can use some of those really high BC 270 bullets that they've introduced, like for the 6.8 Western, the 27 Nosler, that sort of thing. And so I kind of wonder if maybe in the next few years we can see some things like that, where with both of these cartridges, where you introduce, have a standard twist on it that's a little bit, faster than normal for both of these, and then use, say, like a 175 grain ELDX out of the 7 Rim Mag or something, whereas now you can do that, but you would need a custom build or something like that to do it. I don't see the 300 Win Mag going anywhere, though, and really even the 7 Mag, because they're both so darn popular. I think you're right that the 300 Win Mag is the more popular of the two, but man, there's still the 7 Mag is such a very common cartridge that I don't know that it's going to go anywhere, but it may start to get displaced potentially by the 7 PRC, because that cartridge will fit in a standard linked action with a Magnum bolt face, exactly like a 7mm Rim Mag, but it's loaded to a higher pressure, and it has a chamber geometry that's a little bit better suited to more accuracy. It is has a fast twist rifling barrel, so you can use those really high BC bullets on it. It actually has even more case capacity because of the way it's designed, that sort of thing. And so it has all of the advantages of the 7mm Rim Mag, with a couple of other advantages where it may be kind of lacking in certain areas. I don't know. In 20 years, I'll bet it'll probably still be out here, but I wouldn't necessarily be shocked if the 7 Mag is less popular then than it is now.
Yeah.
The
There's
300
just
Win
so
Mag
many
is a little
options too. They keep coming out with a new caliber,
Yeah.
which is great. There's nothing wrong with that. I want to have the most accurate, deadly rifle bullet combination that I can. Right? We all should want that. But yeah, you see all the new PRCs and the 28 Nosler's another one that's I don't have one, but I've shot at buddies. That gun was I was very impressed with that.
Yeah, real high octane, fire breathing Magnum. I actually hunted elk with a 27 Nosler this year, which is the same as the 28 Nosler, just 277 instead of 284 caliber. And it's a great cartridge. But it's more of kind of a niche deal than the 7mm Remington Magnum or the 300 Win Mag.
I think we're almost out of time, so this will have to be a conversation for another day. But I do want to have you back on in the near future and talk about solid bullets versus ballistic tips for hunting purposes. There's pros and cons to both of those, and that one's been on my mind as well. So, I guess as we wrap things up here, I'm going to keep shooting both of these calibers because I'd say the 7 mag was my first love, but then I kind of started to cheat on it with the 300 Win Mag. And people are like, I'll shoot a deer in Texas. They're like, why you? What caliber was that? I'll be like, it's 300 Win Mag. They're like, why are you killing deer with a 300 Win Mag? And I'm like, because I like the deer really dead. I've never had one.
I kind of feel the same way. My 300 Win Mag is
shot.
just kind of fun to shoot, and it's real satisfying to shoot things with it.
I've never had a white-tailed deer go anywhere when shot in the shoulder with the 300 Win Mag. So,
and I'll just say one last thing about the 7 Rim Mag before we leave that I think I kind of glossed over earlier. 7mm, that bore diameter, is in kind of a sweet spot where you can get more high BC bullets in that bore diameter that aren't excessively heavy, and they're not going to, and for that reason, you're going to probably have a little bit less recoil, but still have the benefits of all those high BC bullets. And so, like, you compare like 168 grain Nosler Accubon long range in 7mm, it's going to have a BC of a G1 BC of 0.631, whereas 190 grain Nosler Accubon long range and 30 caliber has a BC of 0.597. So it's quite a bit heavier, and it's going to recoil more, but it's still, is falling quite a bit short of that 7mm bullet there. And so you kind of see that across the board with those bullet weights and those cartridge diameters. So, that's kind of one of those deals where a lot of people really like 7mm for that reason, and it's a valid reason. So just kind of keep that in mind. I don't want it to come off like I'm trashing the 7mm Rim Mag, even though I do personally prefer the 300 Win Mag, but they're both great. And the differences between them, I mean, really, for what a lot of people are doing, is small enough that it probably doesn't make that much of a difference. You use a good bullet and you put it where it's supposed to go. They're both going to kill the heck out of deer, elk, moose, things like that. And, I think it really just kind of comes down to personal preference and kind of fitting what is best for you and what you're doing.
Well, and I guess the last thing to say is that there are a lot of options, bullet wise for each caliber. And you go to the store, and even during the ammo shortage that we've experienced over the last couple of years, we're kind of starting to come out of it now. But you could always find at least a box of 300 or 7mm 7 mag, the old 7 mag. So now I see you can also find 6.5 Creedmoor, though, pretty much everywhere you go. So those seem to be the three that I was on. 308, I guess you didn't really have a problem finding that. But that was one nice thing about COVID, was the calibers that I like to hunt with primarily. I could always find ammunition for them.
Yeah, I was definitely glad that I was more using a lot of the mainstream cartridges like that time, like those when this mess hit, because it was harder to find them, but it wasn't nearly as hard as if I was using something a little bit more obscure.
Yeah. Well, hey, John, if you want to give us your website where folks can read your content or tune into your podcast.
Yeah, sure thing. So my show is the Big Game Hunting Podcast. You can get it on any podcast service that you listen to, or you can go to biggamehuntingpodcast.com and that'll take you to my page. And can you put a link to my 7mm Rim Mag versus 300 Win Mag article if people want to check it out in more detail? That'll go to my blog, and I got a lot of other stuff that's on there kind of in that same vein to these. I do a ton of cartridge comparisons because people love it, and this is one of my most popular ones.
Right on. Well, yeah, we'll do it again soon. We'll talk solids versus ballistic tips and get into that conversation as well.
All right, well, that sounds good. It was great being on the show. Thanks a lot for having me today, Cable.
Yeah, my pleasure as always, John. Take it easy, buddy.